Greetings once again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. You looked for it, and you found it. The podcast where we dive into the deepest, darkest, murkiest waters with a plethora of legendary guests. And who better to interview the coolest, most legendary guest than the hottest host? Yours truly, your bastard of ceremonies, the #1 scumbag, Rex Ruger. You got him right here. And that's Rex, by the way, with three, count them, 3 X's. That's right. You may also know me as the King of Sleaze, a.k.a. the Hair Metal High Priest, a.k.a. the man with the golden voice, and the velvet tongue. And most importantly, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. There he is. Picture the old man looking right over my shoulder, baby. The DNA testing, almost conclusive, and we will prove it once and for all that you're looking at him. The son of glam, the front man for the band, just smoked a few grams, got 1 million fans. Mr. Wop Bop Loo Bop Wop Bang Bang, Shazam, hot damn. And woo, I'm feeling good today. Of course, I am the hardest working man in show business, coming to you as always from the Pink Pussycat Lounge, the Den of Sin. And of course, being the hardest working man in show business, I find time to bring you this podcast filled with legendary guests and still find a way to front numerous glam and sleaze metal bands all around the East Coast. So look for me, you'll find me. Right now, of course, I am looking for players for my newest project, and I've been on here talking about it extensively, and that is Love Sword. So if you feel like you are a virtuoso level player and you think you can back up the second greatest frontman to ever do it, then by all means, you got the chops, get me up in the comment section. Of course, this is the No Frills podcast. Why don't you get frills, Rex? You may ask, because you don't need frills when you get to look at me and get your thrills. Plus, I'm 49 years old, and I don't know shit about technology, so what you see is what you get. You get my little preamble, and then boom, right to it. And of course, you also get to see me inviting my guests here. You get to see a look behind the curtain at how half-assed I am with technology. But and I will also ask for your forgiveness here. I have recently had detached retina surgery on my eye, so I'm a little blind. Let me get myself a look here. And of course, if you want the locks that rock, use the product that I use. And you could be this well, I don't know if you could be this handsome, but no, never mind. I take it back. You couldn't be. Well, today we got a legend for you, and I'm about to bring him in right now. And I'm real happy to have this guy on. So, oh man, won't be a goodie. Ooh, la, 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 la. So yes, as always, legendary guest once again. Are you surprised? Probably not even a little bit, are you? You know how we roll here. So we'll get him in here, and I'm very excited. Got a gazillion things I want to talk to this guy about. So just waiting for him here. I don't really know if he's got the chops to be in Love Sword. I don't know. Or if he'd even bother to waste his time. I mean, who knows, you know? I mean, but I digress. Maybe he's just not interested. He is, after all, very metal, muy metal. So we will see here. I am just inviting him in, and oh, here we go. All right.
All right. Am I supposed to be able to see?
Yes, you are. Yeah, we can't see you, but we can hear you. But
all right.
Hey, there he is. James, good to see you, buddy. You know what? I'm starting to think that me and you almost are like looking in a mirror at each other. What happened?
Old white dudes.
Well, I know what my excuse. I know what my excuse is, man, because I am a direct bloodline of the man himself right here. I don't know if you can see a picture of dear old dad behind me here, but at least that's what I'm claiming anyway. And big paternity suit going on. I just want to get a little taste of that early Van Halen money. I mean,
yeah, there you go.
Shouldn't I be able to live on Easy Street, right? James
Of
Murphy,
course,
I'm
man.
so happy to have you here, man. I do this show a lot, and I come on here and toot people's horn and give them that legendary status, man. But I, in every sense of the word, think of you as a legend. I mean, do you look back at your career and think in the genre that you play, though, that you've done some legendary shit?
Well, I mean, I can't deny that the albums are, have stood the test of time, and
Right.
people still seem to love them and listen to them, regularly. So
Yeah.
And they want to come out and see shows where, some of the original guys are playing those songs, and
Right.
So yeah, I guess it's really, the L word's where you want to go. It's hard to think of a more suitable word.
Well, I like when guests are humble, so I'm more than happy to toot your horn for you. First of all, for fans who may not know, or I don't know, maybe they've been living under a fucking rock, but you have in the past had your own health problems. First and foremost, how is your health these days?
I would say it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I've got. Again, I've recently done a new battery of blood panels, and again the hormone marker that indicates that the pituitary tumor might be growing is a little bit elevated right now, and usually what that means is I need to knuckle down and make sure I don't skip any doses of the medication.
Yeah, don't do that.
And,
don't do that. I feel like I can lecture you because my day job by day is actually a nurse, and I do leave the hair home. So I don't bring that in because I pass meds to old people, so they don't want to wake up first thing in the morning and look at this. That's for sure. I mean, but I am very interested in health issues, obviously, and it's very well publicized that you had a brain tumor, which I find ironic because. One of your closest friends and former bandmates, the legendary, and I can't say that word enough when it comes to him, Chuck Schuldiner, had almost pretty much the same thing as you.
Yeah. Well, what Chuck Schuldiner had was definitely legitimately a brain tumor. It was growing on part of his brain. I think it was called a pontine glioma or something like that.
Yep.
Very serious one. What I had was a pituitary macroadenoma. So I had a big tumor. On my pituitary gland. So it wasn't actually growing on my brain or in my brain. It was growing underneath my brain. And it got so large, about the size of 3 golf balls. Not all combined. It was kind of spread out.
Right.
It was about the size of 3 golf balls, and it was kind of wrapped around the carotid artery in my head as well. And but it put a pretty massive pressure on my brain.
Sure.
So it did affect my brain. It affected my cognitive function, my memory. And behavioral patterns. Absolutely. And it also was pressing on my optic nerve because that's where the pituitary gland is. For people who don't know, it's kind of right behind your eyes. And just underneath your brain. So as it grew, it put pressure both on my optic nerve from behind and on my brain from below.
Right.
And so both my vision and my mind were affected.
Yeah. Nothing you're really using, right? I mean.
Yeah. Who needs all that stuff?
Boy, the joys of getting old, huh? Now I talk.
Well, this hit me in my early 30s, so it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, that is young. I mean, I've been dealing with it. I think I mentioned this to you last night when we were texting, though. I've been having a hell of a time with my own eyes there. Just randomly, the last couple of months, I've had detached retinas. It started with the right eye, had it operated on, then the left eye. Then I just had to have the left eye again for no rhyme or reason. I don't know. So you have to excuse me here. I have some bullet points, and I'm looking at some of the notes and stuff I want to talk to you about, but I've literally had to write it. For those of you who can see it there, I've written it in big, huge letters with a Sharpie because I can't even read my own writing right now because I'm like a fucking cyclops over here with like one eye. So, let me ask you, you were just out playing some shows with Living Monstrosity and kind of, which was great, seeing the death stuff, revisited. Do you like playing these days? And did you find it hard going back and playing that stuff? Because I thought I read an article where you really had to knock some rust off and go back and really, rechannel playing that stuff again.
Yeah. No, I did. I actually relearned the songs and including my solos and everything, pretty quickly. It wasn't hard to relearn them. However, what I didn't do, the part that I should have done that I didn't do and that I dismissed for some reason, I don't know why. I didn't give myself enough time. I'm a busy guy. I got a lot of work. I got a lot of things going on. So I kept, I knew about these shows coming up for like 3 months before they happened.
Right.
And had I been preparing even a third of that time, I wouldn't have had the troubles that I had. But I put it off till like about 10 days before the shows. Yeah. And that's when I sat down to relearn the songs. And that, that's when I started making the time every night to go over it. And I would, I would go through them a couple of times each night for 10 nights. And then, having been absent from the live, from playing live on stage for 16 years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
I've been in the studio. The last time I played live before those dates in December of just this past December, was 16 years prior in 2005.
Right.
When I played at the Roadrunner United 25th anniversary concert.
Yep.
And that, it had only been 5 years since I had played some shows with, been playing live with Testament.
Right.
So it wasn't that big of a deal, and I only had, I think, 3 songs to learn. So or 2, I don't even remember now. But I played, it's been 16 going on 17 years now since I played that show. But I only had like 2 or 3 songs to learn, like Curse of the Pharaohs by Merciful Fate and an Annihilator song and another one, King Diamond Abigail. Yeah. And so I just had to learn 3 songs, and it had only been about 5 years since I had been on stage on a regular basis, so I pulled that off really easily, and it played well and everything was great. And so this time, 16 years later, I kind of forgot about what it really takes to drive something into your mind and be really prepared to play it live. Yeah. And what it is I forgot the old rule of thumb, which is you don't rehearse and practice to learn the songs. You sit down and learn the songs, and then you rehearse and practice to drill them so deeply into your subconscious that you almost can't make a mistake. That
like
you
muscle
forget
memory.
About, you're doing it from just muscle memory and just second nature. Yeah. And I just sort of forgot that maxim, I forgot it. I should have remembered it, but I hadn't played live in, 16 years at that point. So I just thought, I just got to learn the songs and I'll be good to go. Yeah. But what happens is you get up there and little distractions happen and little weird things go wrong. And instead of just being able to go on autopilot, you get completely thrown off the rails by those little things. And then you start panicking and your memory starts taking a dump. And the songs that I had played over and over again for the 10 days prior were just like vanishing from my mind, like what to do. I think, I did a fairly awful job, and I feel really bad for the guys I played with, Terry and Matt and Gus. And, but, at the end of the day, like they told me, and like all the fans, people hardly noticed.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would imagine people are more just geek just to really see, the fact that those songs are getting their due justice and they're getting revisited again.
Yeah. Well, I hold myself to a higher standard than that.
Sure.
But 16 years out of the game, and I forgot some of the basic rules of being able to play well live, which is one is you rehearse until it's their second nature, until you almost can't screw up.
Right.
And even if you're distracted, even if you're, something totally wild happens on stage, your fingers just keep going, even if your mind goes somewhere else. And so you have to drill songs, down like that. Otherwise, any little thing that goes wrong throws you off your game. And then, and then I forgot about just the whole thing of staying hydrated. I just, you get older and you get worried about dumb things. And for some reason, I had this weird irrational fear because I heard that there was no restroom backstage for the artists.
Yeah.
We had to go outside, go all the way around the back and piss out there, like literally out in the bushes out around back, which was not accessible to me while we were playing, you know, or right before or anything. Or in between the main set and the little encore we did, you know, and none of it, you know, I couldn't do any of it. So I had like an irrational fear that I was going to have to piss real bad on stage. You know? And,
I've been there. I mean, you know, I'm a 49-year-old guy, so I understand.
Yeah,
I'm up 3 times. I'm up 3 times a night to piss. My prostate doesn't know it's time to sleep.
Yeah. And you know, this happens, kids. You know, just know you get older, you got to
be forewarned.
Be forewarned. Yeah, and so I subconsciously, even at home, I told myself, okay, I'm just not going to drink a lot before the show.
Right.
But I during that whole 10 days, I was worried about it. As soon as I heard that there was no bathroom backstage.
Yeah.
So subconsciously at home, I started not drinking as much.
Yeah.
So I ended up, as soon as I started sweating a little bit on stage, I ended up starting, you know, having a mild case of dehydration, you know, and it made me a little dizzy and disoriented, and I should have been able to plow through that. Even that, I should have been able to play fine.
Yeah.
And some things I did, but again, I just wasn't rehearsed enough, man. And I was cocky.
Yeah.
I was cocky about how much time I needed. I thought I only need, you know, maybe a week to relearn these songs. And that was true. That's all I needed.
Right.
Probably even less. However, I needed much more time for it to become so drilled into me that it was second nature, that I would play fine, you know, no matter what happened. And, you know, it's a lesson learned. And of course, I apologized profusely that night to all, you know, my bros that I played with and to any fans that would listen. But at the end of the day, you know, the fans anyway were telling me, oh, dude, it was killer. What are you talking about? It sounded awesome to me. You know, people didn't notice, like, okay, you know.
Well, you did make mention that you know, that you had to knock a lot of the rust off because you've been working behind the scenes. So since you haven't played, or since you hadn't been playing in so long, have you found yourself now as a guy who likes to be behind the scenes and likes the producing aspect and more now?
Well, let me just stop you there a little bit and back up a little bit.
Sure.
When you say that I haven't played in a while, I play all the time. I play on half a dozen to a dozen records every single year, and I have been doing that for the past, you know, 20 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's as little as a very short little solo. Sometimes it's as much as damn near all the guitar on a recording. You know, it all depends on what I'm hired to do, and a lot of stuff people will have no idea that I played on it because
that's the point I'm getting at. Yeah, that's what I'm mainly saying to the audience, because I think a lot of people. I see on Google a lot, like
several records, you know.
Yeah, I see on Google a lot of people saying, "What the hell happened to James Murphy?"
Well, you know, like I'm playing on many records, you know, every year, and you know, a lot of those appearances are credited, but who sees credits anymore? You know,
Good point. Very good point.
You know, occasionally I'll get an email. Man, I was listening to this band that I never heard of the other day, and all of a sudden I was like, that's fucking James Murphy. I know it. And I Googled it, and sure enough, it was you, because they can tell, you know, people have always said that they recognize me really quickly.
Your tone. Sure.
So just my style, you know, whatever. Just
absolutely. It's very
it's just got my signature on it. I can't help it. I try, you know,
I
try to not play like me, and it doesn't work out.
well,
unfortunately, I sound like me no matter what I do. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to view it. So I've stayed playing, but that does not mean that I kept myself in live shape.
Right.
You know, not by any means, because that's a whole different
animal.
thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
That's a whole different thing. It's one thing to be able to, you know, to just, you know, pick up and play a solo.
Right.
Than it is to be in the shape to do an hour to hour and a half set.
Right.
You know, multiple nights in a row, and, you know, and be able to pull it off no matter what happens, you know.
Right.
You know, if the other guitar player breaks a string and all of a sudden he's not playing the rhythm underneath your solo anymore, or, you know, or he's not there to start the next part, and that he starts by himself, and I don't really know that riff yet because I've only barely had time to learn my parts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to be prepared. You want to know all the parts, so in case someone's broke a string and it comes to that part, you can play it. And I didn't do that. I didn't have time to do that. I didn't give myself time to do that, and it was very much a lesson learned. It was a wake up call to me. Like, okay, man.
Well, when you do these projects, and you appear on people's albums, and you do the kind of work, you're doing guitar solos or guest work or whatever, how do you choose these projects? Do you have to be like an avid fan of these bands, or do you listen to them prior to and say, geez, I got a good feel for this, or I'm not into this?
I don't have to be an avid fan. I mean, I'm a session guitar player, so I'm available to be hired to do things. Okay. Now, I do have to be able to make sense of the part. The part has to make sense to me.
Right.
I have to, when I listen to the part that they want me to play over, I have to hear it and hear something.
Right.
And sometimes, the really easy parts to play over are with changes, chord changes.
Right.
Where it's not a riff per se, but it's chord changes. That provides a perfect setting for playing solos over, because you got a harmonic context that makes sense. And a lot of times riffs can be fun to play over too, but sometimes riffs are just so clustered and chromatic, and it's really even hard in a lot of metal riffs to determine what the key center is. I go, okay, well, what key is this? Are they just modulating every bar to a different key, or is he just random playing whatever the hell notes he wants? It doesn't mean it's not a cool sounding riff. It just means it's going to be freaking hard to play over. So what I tend to do, but just because a part may be like that, like really riffy and really not in a particular key or something, doesn't mean that I won't want to play over it, because sometimes I find really cool things to play over stuff like that. You just have to really follow, pay close attention to what the rhythm part is doing, and you got to hit a lot of rhythmic cues. You got to do stuff that makes sense to it rhythmically. Right. A lot of time in certain changes, you can kind of float around a little bit, but and as long as you land on a solid downbeat, it's okay if you do a little floating around. It actually sounds really cool. And I've done a lot of that over the years, but with certain parts, you have to really lock in and almost learn the riff that they're doing, and certainly learn all the little rhythmic figures, so that you can do things that make sense over the part. Because in those kind of parts, you're not just going to say, okay, this is in, A minor, but he's, hitting this, major chord here, so I can actually do the harmonic minor, so, okay, I can just play a harmonic minor over this. And therefore, a few other things like a pentatonic or a blues and other things that will fit. But I mean, so you can do that a lot of time on changes, or you can follow changes. Okay, when it goes to this chord, I'm going to play this scale. When it goes to this chord, I'm going to change scales and go to a scale that sounds cool over this chord. So that it's multiple approaches you can do. But like I said, a lot of times I'm getting in metal. Someone wants me to play over something that's just so riffy and so notey, and it's just really chromatic. It doesn't really have a specific key center. It's changing around so much. So I can't really use either method. There's no changes to follow, and there's no one particular key center where I can pick a scale. So I just have to lock in and play with the riffs in a way, and just try to do something cool rhythmically on top of it. Not just copy the rhythm, but to do something that adds to it. That might be a different subdivision and a cool vibe over the part. So but occasionally people want me to play over a part that I really just cannot come up with anything cool. I'm not hearing anything. I'm just not feeling it, and it's just a difficult, if not impossible, part for me to play over. And in those cases, usually I'll say, well, this part isn't really that conducive, and I'll say, what about this part? I'll try to pick other parts and
spitball ideas.
To spitball ideas. And sometimes that's sometimes I'm playing these solos before vocals are done. So
right,
I don't know what's ultimately going to have singing over it. So, I can usually find somewhere to play on almost anything. I don't really recall turning too many people down because of not being able to find something or, to play or a part to play over that where I can come up with.
But when you say a session guitarist, and of course, obviously, people who know you probably most identify you, as you said, as a guy from the metal world. But would you do a project where people would be surprised, like like somebody that's more pop oriented or somebody like that, or do you really have to feel like a passion for what you're playing? Or can you kind of take yourself outside of it and say, yeah, this band, it's a pop band, asked me to do, to contribute some guitar parts?
Well, no, I would absolutely do that because, because I'm up for challenges. But, I mean, I don't really see pop bands seeking me out. Having said that,
that's true.
I had a funk band from Spain seek me out because the guitar player was also a fan of metal and he was a fan of mine. So he asked me to play on the, on a solo in his funk band.
Right.
Now, and I did it because I was, I was appreciative of him being a fan and I thought it would be cool to sort of flex that muscle a little bit, try something, try something new, something different.
Absolutely.
And so I'm always up for a challenge, especially a musical challenge. I'm not, I don't necessarily hate on any particular, have a genre of music that I hate on. I would say that there's artists in every genre that I like or don't like.
Sure.
So I like some pop. I just probably not most of it that's just played on what passes for radio these days.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, I've played on non-metal stuff, a number of times, and would be happy to do so again. It's at that point, it's more about, hey, it's interesting to do something different.
Right.
It's interesting to me. I've been playing over metal, for at this point, almost 40 years. So
right. It's familiar, very familiar.
Yeah. So to get to do other things, blues, funk, pop, whatever, it's fun. Now, that doesn't mean that that this is something that I expect to be doing a lot of. People don't seek me out for that.
Right.
It's not like someone, starts a pop band and goes, let's get James Murphy, that death metal guy.
Right.
That thrash metal guy to play a solo here. The only way that's
it's not like the Jonas Brothers are sitting around with your name on their mind, probably.
Yeah, not at all. So it's not something that I would ever probably do much of for that simple reason.
But one artist whose name whose mind your name does pop up on a lot, and he is a friend of ours, is the great outlier guitarist Ray Curry. Your friend, my friend, your friend, my friend, and I will admit it on here because usually I don't like to admit it. But now, so when he picks up the phone and got a new outlier project, you seem to always be willing. So you forged a pretty good friendship. And for those that don't know, I implore you, go help out my buddy Ray Curry. Give his band Outlier out of North Carolina a listen. Great thrash band. Known him since since we were kids. Awesome dude. But how did you get involved with working on him? Because I know even when he was up here with a death metal band, you had contributed some guitar parts to him. So you're down for doing stuff even when that economically there might not be a big trade-off. Because Ray obviously isn't going to lavish you with lots and lots and lots of dollars because he's never really been in it for the money aspect of it. He just loves to play music. He's not a touring musician by any means. So
yeah. Well, I was approached by Ray initially as someone I had met before, but when he wanted me to play on the Outlier, he just offered to hire me and he paid me and he paid my fee. So, I have a pretty standard fee. He paid it. And, but the bonus for me is that I really loved the part. I loved the song and I really dig that album. And I mean, that is the only really time that I've ever worked with Outlier is that one guest solo. And it was good fun. I might be doing another one, I think.
Yes, if you remember back in the Utica days, though, he did have a death metal band called Half Dead that you also appeared on.
I will take your word for it.
Yes, 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 yes. And you can check, you can fact check that with Ray. But so Ray, who sat behind me in accounting class in high school, and is probably the reason why I have no ability to do my own taxes. Does Ray ever offer you any tax advice? Because he is a CPA.
Interestingly enough, I did call on Ray for his
As you
CPA
should.
expertise, and he gave me some sound advice.
Yes, yeah, he is good for that sometimes. He is good for that sometimes. I think that it's probably surprising and to a lot of people, and he is proof that you certainly cannot judge a book by its cover, because he does not look like a guy that you would want to hand over, all this great responsibility of doing your taxes, because he very much looks like a guy in a metal band.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
but
like,
he's
a very smart dude, though. Yeah, he is a very smart dude. So what is it like now? Like, well, first of all, what was the impetus behind, obviously the material is great. As I mentioned at the top of the interview, Chuck is, as I think, in the pantheon of the metal world, certainly widely considered a legend. What was the impetus for going back now and doing this living monstrosity and pulling the old stuff out and revisiting it and getting it back out there in front of an audience? Is it just because generations of metal fans have missed out on it, or was it something you discussed with Chuck's remaining family? Was it nostalgia? What was it for you?
Well, I mean, in this case, of course, I wanted to do it for the nostalgia, for the,
Sure.
For the brotherhood, for the fun of doing it, and for, the family was involved, and through the promoter, Stephen Berwanger.
Yep.
And also, we, I was, I've been raising money to, for a very expensive oral surgery and a bunch of dentistry that I need done. And so it was, helpful, it came together in all those ways to help with all of that, so.
Yeah. Now, when you talk about I'm glad you actually brought that up. When you talk about incurring medical expenses, and I'm just want to pick your brain and see if you have any ideas on this, though. Like, is it kind of sad when you think sometimes, though, that musicians, especially ones that haven't achieved, huge commercial success, if you're not a John Bon Jovi or somebody up in that stratosphere, is it difficult when you see people in the arts struggling? Because obviously you guys don't work in a standard field where you can sign up for an HMO or a health plan or something like that. Is it disheartening, like when you see artists going through shit and there is no kind of, safety net, as you guys get older and stuff, and your health does start to kind of go south?
Yeah, no, it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating to deal with, not having insurance. Unable to actually get insurance, getting insurance from time to time, but then having, just getting dropped because their rules changed.
Right. Right.
And since the ACA passed, I can't be refused on the basis of pre-existing condition anymore.
Right.
That was not true for the first more than a decade of my of my illness, but even though now I can get ACA, a lot of little weird little rules change here and there, or whatever, or I just get in a place where I can't afford it anymore, and I ends up lapsing.
Right.
And in any way, I've never found a plan that had worth the damn dental included.
Yeah, I know. Those dentists. If I could go back in hindsight, I would have been a dentist. Those fucking guys got it all figured out. I don't know. Those are the guys. Those are the guys really making the money. I'm definitely swimming in the wrong end of the healthcare pool for sure. Because nursing now, especially post-COVID, just healthcare in general is just, it's really, really, really taking a severe dump as far as staffing. And I'm sure you see it going into, healthcare facilities for various appointments and stuff. It's really, it's really a bad time in healthcare.
Taking my fiance to the emergency room.
Yeah.
And having to wait a long time to get her in because half of the pods in the ER are shut down due to understaffing,
Sure. Yeah. It's a real problem right now. Yeah.
And meanwhile, she's suffering, literally writhing in pain.
And you're powerless in that situation because you just have to sit down and play the waiting game. You know, I always tell everybody, if you're going to the ER, you know, certainly make sure you've carved out a nice 7 to 10 hour window because you're not going anywhere for a while.
Yeah, especially, man, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know what hospitals are like.
I'm sure you're an awesome nurse, and I've dealt with a number of really awesome nurses as we've both had to go to the emergency room several times. You know, go into ER because of lack of insurance, to things that have happened with us, and I've you know, we've had some amazing nurses, you know, attending to, you know, to us and our issues, but you know, had a few really snotty ones too.
Oh yeah,
you know,
they're out there. They're certainly out there.
Really.
And I think post-COVID, it's certainly gotten worse because, you know, certainly people's, you know, demeanor have changed. I've seen it with people that I work with who did have much more of a sunny disposition before all this happened. But it just, you know, it wears people down. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's any end in sight, even though the vaccinations and the boosters are all out. I feel like I'm going to be wearing a mask probably for the rest of the time that I work in healthcare. I don't see that going anywhere anytime soon. Become part of my uniform now. You know, I feel like it's just an everyday thing. But getting back to the music now, you're down in Florida now, and I've asked other musicians about this, and maybe it's the heat, maybe it's the humidity, maybe it's a whole concoction of different ingredients. But what is it about Florida specifically that's always made it such a burgeoning scene for extreme metal down there? Because obviously a lot of great bands, Obituary, Cannibal Corpse, Malevolent Creation, you know, I mean, there's been a lot of DSI. There's been a lot of the legendary extreme metal bands that call Florida home.
I have no idea. I've been asked this in interviews since the late 80s, man. So
you have?
Yeah. And trust me, all through the 90s, which is when most of my career like took place.
Yeah.
Like I did a tour of the UK and Europe with a band called Agent Steel in '87, and then we started recording Spiritual Healing in '89. But it came out in '90, and so all my like stuff that I'm known for is all like throughout the '90s. And throughout the '90s, I must have been asked that question, you know, 1,000 times if it was once. Yeah. And I'll tell you, like I've said every single time, pretty much, I have no idea. I have no idea.
Well, I guess
I think these things tend to happen in clusters.
Yeah.
Because of just one or two bands will have success.
Yes.
And then, and it's not even caused by the bands or the local scene. The local scene and the bands in the local scene will play into it because, hey, that's you know, it's
right.
That's what's available to them at that point. But it's labels that did it back in the day. They would find one or two bands in an area, and then all of a sudden they would want to sign every band from that area. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know,
very much like the Seattle scene back in the 90s.
Same with the Seattle scene. Same with, you know, you can name any number of various scenes that have happened over time. You know, I think like Mastodon kicked off this massive rush of Georgia bands. You know, Atlanta area bands, and you know, it's happened over and over and over. You get a band from a particular area that does well, and then the labels start looking for other bands from that area. And why is that? I don't know. You know what I mean? I really
can't put a finger on it.
Yeah, I don't know why. I guess they figured that, you know, there's something going on in the scene there that
better cash in on it, right?
Yeah,
better cash
get
in
there and get it. So, you know, I just think that happened in a minute. At one point, there was one point in the very early 90s where all you had to do was make a metal band and go to Morristown and record a demo.
Yes.
You were probably going to be signed.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, you know, as long as you were halfway competent, you know.
Now, here's something I have in my notes here that I find fascinating, and I want to bounce this off for you too, because, you know, obviously working in healthcare, you know, I kind of want to pick your brain on this. You don't have, you know, because of the health issues you were going through. I read somewhere that you had no recollection of even appearing on the Testament album, The Gathering, or didn't recall those sessions. And also, had a tryout for a spot in Megadeth and don't remember how you did it. That was directly as a result of what you were dealing with.
You got it pretty close. It's not that
Okay.
I don't remember playing on The Gathering. I have memories of doing it, but
Right.
I don't remember it comprehensively like I would if I weren't sick. You know,
Right.
I remember it more like little flashes of memory that some of which seem almost dreamlike. You know,
right.
And you know, it just.
But if you had got offered the gig in Megadeth, was it something you were prepared to take? Obviously, a huge profile. Obviously, it's a game changer. You know, getting a job.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't try out to not take it.
Right.
Had I got the gig, I would have taken it. Now, I've talked to Dave a couple of times since then, and I've also heard an interview he did on KNAC back in the day.
Yeah,
and so right after they chose the guitar player they chose ultimately was Al Pitrelli, because this is right before they did the World Needs a Hero album, which
I remember.
I think most Megadeth fans have kind of forgotten. It was Megadeth's got a lot of really good albums, and but they got a couple of snoozers that are a little bit forgettable.
They do.
And that was probably one of them in most fans' estimation. For me, I couldn't really tell you. I haven't listened to it enough to know how much I really like it. Or don't. But that was the album I was trying out to be on. I would have been on that album.
Yeah.
Or whatever it would have been called had I got the gig. But I talked, there was an interview he did sometime after that album came out, and they were asking about how they got Al Pitrelli, and they were asking about, the interviewer said something along the lines of, we heard, and this and that, and the other guitar player tried out, and they mentioned my name, and Dave sort of ran down the line, and he got to me, and he said, and what he said, and because I remember being at the audition, but I don't remember auditioning. And so I really wanted to hear what Dave had to say, and I was fully expecting, like, oh, that guy was absolute mess, he played like shit, and because I was sick, and I didn't have a lot of time to prepare. But I was much more on my game then. I had just been recently on the road with Testament when I did that audition. And and I had learned Megadeth songs in the past. It wasn't like it was the first time I ever learned them. I actually sent an audition tape in after Chris Poland left after Peace Sells. And they ended up getting Jeff Young at that point. No, I take it back. I sent my audition tape in after Jeff Young left, and they ended up getting Marty Friedman. Which
is that sour grapes when you don't? Is that sour grapes when you don't get a gig like that? Do you look at a guy like Marty Friedman?
No. Come on, man. Come on. No. Come on. Marty Friedman's an absolute monster. He's a
monster
friend. He's a friend. He's a monster player, and he's a super nice guy. He absolutely was the right person to get that gig. And I mean, come on, Rust in Peace.
I know.
One of the monster albums of all time.
No denying it.
And Marty tore it up on there. And I was just a shithead kid in my in my bedroom, still living at my mom's house. I sent a crappy little VHS tape. My hair was barely to my shoulders.
I know. Well, I should clarify.
I probably looked, dude. I looked a lot younger than I was. I was probably like 19 or something at that point. Or almost 20, and I probably looked 15. So. I had no chance of getting the gig.
I meant to clarify about sour grapes, just like not your relationship with Marty now, but just as you're saying, you as an idealistic
not
kid back then, thinking like, why this fucking guy, not me,
Dude, I sent that tape off with no expectation whatsoever. So no, not at all. And when I went to the audition later, the one where I went to after Marty left, Marty actually I was one of the people he recommended that Dave should try out. And so I got that audition as a pretty direct result of Marty recommending me as one of, I don't think I was the only person he recommended that Dave auditioned, but I was one of them. And so I really felt good about that, but I was sick. I was already terribly sick from the tumor, and I didn't know it yet. It wasn't I didn't know what was wrong with me. I had an idea something was wrong with me, but I didn't know what it was. So as I listened to this playback off a cassette someone had made, of this interview on KNAC after they had picked Al Pitrelli and made the album World Needs a Hero. And they asked Dave, and I fully expected Dave to say, oh, he was garbage. You know, I don't know what was wrong with that guy. What he said was, we auditioned James Murphy, and he played great, but he wasn't the look we were going for. And I didn't know what to think of that until I ran into Dave a couple years later, after hearing that tape. I was at a Gigantor, and I had taken my brother backstage to meet some of the bands, and we were back there hanging out with Nevermore, and we were had come out of Nevermore's dressing room, and we were in the hallway, and Dave came walking by, and everyone, kind of, at that point, he's Gigantor, this is Dave.
Sure.
People kind of parted like at the parting of the Red Sea to let him walk through, and he just kind of walked on through and was nodding at a few people, and he passed right by me. I wasn't even going to try to talk to him. I was a little bit embarrassed.
Yeah.
But I was with my little brother, who was a massive Megadeth fan.
Yeah.
So he kind of walked past me looking straight ahead, but then he stopped and then just backed up, like literally took 3-4 steps backwards and turned and looked at me, and he goes, "Hey, James." I'm like, okay. Oh, God, shit. So we talked to him for a minute, and he did tell me what the deal was at that audition. He said, "No, you played fine. You just looked like you were sick, and you acted like someone who was sick." And I took him to mean perhaps like someone who had an illness,
right?
But I took it also to mean like perhaps someone who was strung out.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay, yes.
Because a lot of people thought that. A lot of people thought I was on drugs. That was, the effect that that tumor had on me. Left some people thinking that, hey, perhaps James Murphy's on drugs. So, in reality, I didn't look the part that he was looking for, because he wasn't looking for someone that it wasn't. He was looking for a prettier boy, that could look
right. No, he sensed something. He probably sensed something, and he wasn't being presumptuous. Obviously, he's battled his own demons as well. So he may have, he certainly knows what that would appear to be.
Yeah, he was clean at that time, I take it, and he was looking for someone that he wasn't looking for someone who looked like a junkie, and looked strung out. He said, "Man, you were just like, you took like 2 or 3 naps in the dressing room while we were waiting around." So I'm like, and I was like, "Yeah." And I said, "No, don't get me wrong. I understand completely." And I said, and even by some stroke of crazy fate, you had chosen me, which it would have been ill-advised, because I never would have been able to pull it off. I would have been gone in no time. I would have been gone within a matter of months from having to go get this surgery, and which was like a year-long recovery. So I was like, you dodged a bullet. You saw the writing on the wall.
Absolutely.
He may have misidentified what it was, but he knew something was terribly wrong.
It
didn't really have anything to do with my playing. I mean, I think although I can't imagine that I played super great or anything, but I think I played passably. But he he recognized that I was ill. He just didn't know what it was. And so I didn't get that audition, and absolutely no bitter feelings about it at all. To answer your question,
fair enough.
None whatsoever. In fact, I'm pretty grateful that I didn't get that gig, because
in hindsight,
I got it, and had I been able to hold it together enough to pull off those gigs, I probably would have died in my bunk on a tour bus somewhere.
It might not have been a good ending.
When my carotid artery finally got squeezed off,
absolutely,
by this damn tumor, So
it was meant to happen. It was meant to happen.
It's all good.
So let me ask you this, and I want to ask this a different way, because it's the dreaded, influence question. But I don't want to word it that way towards you. But as somebody with a distinct tone, and as somebody, who certainly, this is an understatement, has certainly enormous guitar chops. When who's a guy that when you hear play really makes you stand up at attention? I don't want to say influences, but who's somebody like you look at as another guitar player, maybe in the past when you were growing up, or even somebody now? Who are some of your favorite players?
Well, I mean, in the past, I mean, I used to be able to learn how to play my favorite guitar players' solos. I would learn them. And there's just a lot. I mean, I could list that forever. I mean, my very first probably influence to make me want to play in a band was Ace Frehley.
Right.
Followed in short order by Tony Iommi, Angus Young, and then Randy Rhoads.
All pretty good ones. Yep.
You know, so I got bit by the bug in that way, you know, and you know, my dad, you know, played guitar, so there was always an acoustic kicking around the house. I didn't always have access to it, but when I did, he would show me a chord or two here and there.
Right.
And he was just kind of the strummer, like the guy that would strum and sing like old folk songs and old country songs.
Campfire. Yeah.
But you know, so there was access, at least, even though, you know, albeit limited, there was access to a guitar at home. And you know, I did learn a few chords, I learned a few melodies, and then eventually I got summer jobs and I bought myself an electric, and I started learning, you know, Iommi riffs and Blackmore riffs, etc.
Starting where a lot of kids start.
You know which ones? I don't even need to say them. Everyone knows. You know?
I know. I read some article somewhere where still the #1 riff that kids learn is still "Smoke on the Water." Is it always been that way?
Craziness, yeah. But you know, so you know, I learned those riffs, and then I started learning, like, you know, Crazy Train and Over the Mountain and stuff like that, and you know, and I was sort of off to the races. Now, there are still players like that today that blow my mind, and you know, I mean, there's guys like Guthrie Govan. Forget about it. That dude's insane.
Yeah.
You know, but I listen to a lot of more obscure players. Probably not a lot of people would really recognize. You know, I mean, there's guys out there now that, you know, guys like Andy Wood and Brent Mason and you know, guys like that blow my world. That dude from Widespread Panic.
It's nice when their names get mentioned, though, because as you say, a lot of people don't know their names, and it's a shame. I just had that conversation with my wife last night about how sometimes people with immense talent get no recognition, and then you'll hear people on the radio that are worth like hundreds of millions of dollars, and you know that they were just, a lot of it was just luck and timing. You know what I mean? I think that has to do with that seems to be a common thread when I talk to other musicians on here, and obviously, with the musical landscape changing, you know, did you ever think that here in 2022 that this would be the trend that we would follow, and you know, we would be seeing the death of a physical product, music would be digitalized, and it would be very difficult for musicians to make money? Did you see us headed in this direction?
I started seeing it about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, with when downloading really just sort of was at its apex, you know, when people were really just wholesale, you know, downloading stuff, you know.
I know.
You know, P2P stuff, and you know, using stuff like LimeWire and crap like that, and
you
know, blogs that would, you know, just put links up to MP3s, and they'd get pulled down. There'd be a DMCA or whatever, or DR, whatever that's digital rights, you know, claim against it. And then the link would go down, and they'd put it back up, and then their blog would get shut down, and they'd open another one. You know, and people, you know, I sort of followed that trend. Like, what are people doing here? Because you know, now I understand a desire to get away from physical media for certain people. I mean, certainly as someone with a massive music collection of hard digital media, hard media, be it vinyl or CD and CDs. I said you start running out of space. It starts to become cumbersome. You know, and you know, to deal with it. I understand it completely, but what it really is like, people didn't used to have that. Only certain, like, really collectors would have that much, you know. People didn't. Now people have, like, you know, they get Spotify or Apple Music or Tidal or whatever, and then in their library they got literally thousands of albums worth of songs.
Yeah, that's me.
And you know, they're hardly ever listen to any of them. And when anything new comes out, like this, you know, back in the day, you know, 30 albums would come out in a month, and you would have to decide which ones you were going to spend your shekels on, and once you bought those, you fucking listened to them. You know, you wore the grooves out on that thing, you know.
And more importantly, you poured over those liner notes and you read that stuff like the Bible.
And it was, you know, you know, I don't want to sound like an old man, you know, lamenting the bygone days, but you know, I mean, there are still vinyl fans out there doing that to this day, but it just used to be everybody, you know. And I think it imbued into people, it inculcated into the audience, you know, a respect for the art for the bands that people don't have today. I mean, they like stuff, but that doesn't mean, that doesn't mean they won't stop. They put on the new album by whatever favorite band X comes out, and they'll be listening to 2 or 3 songs, maybe get through 3/4 of one, half of another, and like 10 seconds of the next one. Then they're like, ooh, they dropped a new album too, or a new single, and then they've moved on. And they may or may not tell themselves they're going to get back to that, but they almost never do. People can literally add everything that comes out to their library, and and it's what, $10-11 a month, and it has changed the value of music. Music is valueless to most people now.
Well, I guess the problem that I have, the most, though, is that when I've interviewed guys on here, and I guess this is my own short-sightedness, and probably just still having that old school mentality. But, when I'll interview guys from what I consider to be legendary, especially a lot of thrash bands, I've had guys from Flotsam on here and guys from Violence. And I guess, it's an error in my own thinking. But you look at these guys and you just think, wow, there's no way in hell that these guys aren't at least okay. But the sad part is that lots of people have to take a day job and they don't sustain off of music. And I guess that just seems sad to me. It does. I mean,
yeah, not everybody can support themselves doing it.
I know.
And a lot of people, a lot of bands will say, well, you should do it for the love of music, not for the money.
Right.
Well, try to do a band. Try to do a band, bro. And take it out on the road and do it as like your primary.
Right.
Just get a day job, support it. Yeah. Okay. Well, then when are you going to go on tour? When are you going to record? Yeah, you can make it happen, but you're going to severely cut down how much touring you can do.
Absolutely.
How much recording you can do, how much time, how much rehearsals you can do. You're gonna, be cut down. I really, I think we should. I think there's a lot of value in the, this world of recording and distributing your music out to the world, to being opened up to more people. I mean, literally, it's available to anyone who wants to do it now.
Sure. Yeah.
There's value in that, but there's also, unfortunately, a lot of crap that used to get filtered out.
Yeah.
There's no filter anymore, and so you got to slog through it. And hey, it works. It works. It's a system. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of releases up on these streaming sites that never get streamed.
Yeah,
except by the artists themselves showing it to people, trying to get them. Yeah. And their hell, even their families won't stream it. You know what I mean? There's lots and lots and lots like that, but, so, there is still, people know what they like, but people used to give things a chance,
Right. Absolutely.
And they don't give something a chance anymore. If you went and spent your $12 or whatever it cost to get a vinyl record back in, 1990, and you gave it a chance. You listened to it and go, I'm not really feeling it. Let me listen to it again, because you spent your damn money and you took your time, so you're going to listen to it again. And maybe third or so, fourth listen in, some songs start to click with you.
Sure.
And then before you know it, you're like, damn, this is one of my favorite albums. Because a lot of times it's the growers that are sticky. You know what I mean? They stick with you.
Yes. Yes.
The growers are the stickers.
Yeah.
And the ones that hit you right away and just blow you away, that just topple you over and go, oh, I love this fucking song, and you just can't stop listening to it. Right. Those are the ones that fade fast.
Those go away. Yeah, those go away.
Those fade a lot quicker to you. And so that's what I lament. It's not that I lament, hey, I accept it. I have an Apple Music subscription,
Me too. You got to play ball.
I hear most new things, And I recognize that this is, where the world is at. But I think artists should unionize and force these companies to pay more.
Yes.
And to be more accountable,
Yes.
I mean, there's just no excuse for a band that prior to this model would have been able to pay all their bills, and maybe buy a car or two, and now they can't do anything except work. They can't do
Right.
anything. Meanwhile, the guy who owns Spotify is, you know, a Brazilianaire, you know?
Yeah.
I think this is unjustifiable. I think the rates that are paid are atrocious. But, you know, we got to figure out how to fix the way it is, because we're never going to roll it back. You're never going to put the genie back in the bottle and go back to physical media. And we probably shouldn't want to. Physical media will be produced for the collectors that want it, probably in perpetuity, because look at how many years has it been since vinyl was supposed to be dead. Meanwhile, you can still go get most new releases on vinyl.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and so CD will stick around, vinyl will stick around. It'll be in much smaller quantities. It will be for the collectors who want to be collectors. But your average music consumer is just going to stream. They can't even be bothered to download it anymore. You know what? It's easier. It's easier to just pay the $10-12 a month and just stream it, rather than try to get it for free and have to use up a bunch of hard drives and shit. Right. You know,
exactly. Yeah.
And sit there and download things. No one wants to do that, you know, anymore. And so this is what the model is now, and we got to accept it. But we can work to make it more favorable for artists, absolutely, and we should. So most of my gripes are just where how the numbers are falling right now. I think it should be adjusted to be a little more in favor of artists. And the only other remaining gripes that I have are just sort of lamenting not the loss of the old model on the business side, but the loss of the old model in terms of the value that it imbued music with for people. No one will ever, I think it's really hard for new artists coming up in this model to have the chances, because now it's like, there's a lot of artists that just put out singles now.
Right. And that's going to be
every 3 or 4 months or so, they'll put out a single.
Right.
And maybe at the end, they'll aggregate it into what they call an album. But it was done over a period of a couple of years, just putting out singles. And here's the problem I have with that. What I don't like about that is, number one, you can't you can't guarantee that something's going to be a single just because you call it a single.
Right.
It's going to be successful.
It has to catch on.
Single,
Yeah.
But so that's an issue. But the main problem I have with it is that there was something to that, getting people together in a room, and playing together and writing a bunch of songs to make an album, because that's all well and good that there's songs that are meant to be the singles and that those are the songs the label are going to push. But I can't count to you how many albums from the 70s and 80s and 90s where my favorite songs were not ever the singles. They were never released as singles. They're album cuts. They're the deep cuts. And those are the songs that everyone loves now and that people can listen to, because they weren't beat to death with it on the radio 1,700 times a day, and have it shoved down their throat by MTV back when MTV used to actually play music videos, and those album cuts are important. And if you go to a model where you're just writing a single every 3, 4, 5, 6 months, however long you do it, once a month, whatever, you are not putting yourself in a situation where you're forced to be creative. You're forced to, I'm a firm believer that some of the most valuable art is created under the rubric of the craftsman. Not that of the artiste. Right. Because you want to sit around and be an artiste and wait until inspiration strikes you from on high. Well, first of all, I think you're a pretentious twat. But second of all, you're not going to write a lot. You're going to write maybe a song every 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
You're not going to be real productive.
And and you still have no guarantee that song's going to be successful for you, that anyone's going to care. Meanwhile, if you just learn when to take off the artiste's fucking beret or whatever the hell.
It's called a beret. It would be a beret. Strap on your craftsman, your burly leather craftsman's fucking. Get your tool belt out.
Tool belt and tarp or whatever the hell you wear over your
hard hat,
tunic, apron, whatever. And get to fucking work. Some of the most amazing art is created that way. And it's not, You may feel like you're slogging it out, but sometimes the inspiration just pops out when you're forcing yourself to do things, and you might not even recognize it at the time. But, you know, years later, when people like, dude, my favorite song on that album is blah, 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 a song that was never like meant to be a single, you know, and those songs, going to the single only thing, you know, waiting for, you know, inspiration on high, waiting for the muse to strike you, you know, a lot of those deep cut tracks that really embody everything that is, as far as I'm concerned, true art. Sorry, I'm transferring you to a
that's okay,
a position where I can actually drive, because you know
that's
what?
all right.
We can wrap this up with me driving, because I have to go pick up the missus from work.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah. Surely our audience will go for the ride.
That's, if anything, that's what I lament is the let me decline that.
Well, you did kind of answer my question. You did kind of answer my question for me.
You know, you got to be able to not just be an artist, you know, an artiste. You got to be able to be a craftsman.
Right. Well, my question was certainly going to be, and I certainly do get numerous answers from different musicians about this, but, you know, which direction, and you know, you working on the other side of it as a producer, you must see this too. But there are people that certainly want to take the singles route. Some people still want to do a fully realized full-length album. Some people are choosing to go the EP route. What happened? Did I lose you there, bud? Did I lose him? Hold on a second there. Let's see if we can get James back in there, man. He's on the road. He went mobile on us, but this is what the spontaneity of a podcast is, man. We will get the great James Murphy back in here. There he is.
Yeah,
That's all right, man. That's all right. But no, speaking back to my point there, though, so obviously, you know, you kind of headed off what my question was going to be. So you certainly like the idea of artists still getting in and doing a fully realized 10, 12 song long play album. You like that still?
Absolutely. I think you should. I think every band should, you know, once a year, once every year and a half, once every 2 years, whatever year. Every band has a different speed. Every creative team has a different flow. So whatever it is for you, whatever it is for the needs of your of your particular, music and you know, band and or your fans.
Yeah.
But do it. Get together.
Yes.
Write music together. And
has a lot of it been affected by, has a lot of it been affected?
This advice, don't thank me for it. I'm telling you, you know, you
absolutely.
got to get together and write it.
Do you think the world's attention span, though, has kind of put a hindrance on art nowadays? Because it seems like everybody is just like, come on, fucking show me your best right now.
That's the other issue that I have currently with the way things are done. Yeah. You know, and the way things are done today of the new model is it's just put a focus on, you know, give us your best, give it now, and it better be good, or we're flicking over to the next fucking thing, and, you know, never to return. And it's sad, you know.
It is sad.
At the end of the day, those who stick with it and persevere and have music that's going to connect with people will win out in some fashion. You know?
So I want to ask your opinion on this, because you appeared on in two different respective bands, obviously, but you appeared on two of my favorite albums. Well, but my favorite album by Death is Spiritual Healing, and my favorite Obituary album is Cause of Death. But, you know, what album do you think you did your best playing on? It doesn't just got to be out of those two albums, but what do you look back on and say, wow, I was really hitting on all cylinders, man. That's the best shit.
You called out Spiritual Healing, and what else?
Cause of Death.
Cause of Death. I actually think that my very best playing is on my debut, my first solo album, Convergence. That has my best playing on it, hands down. If I go to a band thing, I would agree with you on Spiritual Healing, but then I'd probably go to Testament Low.
Okay. And of course, those are just opinions. Let me also ask too, because the fans will probably be interested in this too. Will there be any more from Disincarnate?
I hope so.
You hope so?
I hope so.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So fans may get more Disincarnate somewhere on down the road. As far as like, do you have stuff already in the can and done, or don't have any Disincarnate material?
Nothing is done. I have riffs underway being written,
Right.
but I've also got some complications around that to deal with. Like,
Right.
what all personnel will be able to actually do it and have some follow through. We'll see.
Right.
I'm leaving a lot of it in their hands.
Sure.
Sure. It's going to be up for them to decide.
Now, obviously, from being friends with you on Facebook, I know that that you are engaged. Congratulations on that. Will there be wedding bells in James Murphy's future anytime?
Absolutely.
There will be.
Absolutely.
There will be. James Murphy. Murphy will no longer be a bachelor. You'll be off the market.
Oh, I've been off the market. I'm not a bachelor. I haven't been a bachelor for a long time.
Well, I'll tell you what.
As you mentioned, I'm engaged. I've been engaged for a few years, and me and my fiance live together. We have a house together in in Central Florida, and as my mom puts it, my 74-year-old mom, who's obviously from a completely different era. We're not married, so the term she uses is shacking up.
Yes, you guys are shacking up.
So I'm shacking up with my fiance, and like I said, we got a house here in Central Florida, and we're living our lives.
But from what I see, though, man, I'll tell you what, you are one of those guys who likes to fucking post your meals, man. But I'll tell you what, you look like you're eating fucking good.
Hey, man.
I'm not saying you look fat. I'm just saying though that your girl looks like she.
I definitely have put on some pounds.
She throws down in the kitchen. Yeah, she throws down in the kitchen.
Man. She sure absolutely throws down, and consequently, I'm on a little bit of a diet. It turns out she can also throw down under some dietary restrictions. So I cut out white stuff like potatoes and pasta and bread.
That's good.
And I've cut out extra sugary stuff and all of that, and made a lot of changes. And she could throw down even under those restrictions, it turns out. So
I'm probably not as good. I'm probably not as good as I should be, despite working in the healthcare field. But you know what, though? I did quit smoking cigarettes years and years ago, but there are so many nurses and doctors, too, that are always out there outside the facility smoking away. They should know better, but sometimes we don't in our field.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Are you happy as hell to see, though? Are you happy as hell to see that a lot of the death catalog now, especially via Relapse Records, has really received this great treatment where everything's been reissued and there's demos and I don't know if you've seen a lot of stuff that's been reissued, but it's great. It's great, right? I mean, it's
absolutely.
Are you happy to see that Chuck? What would you want people to remember about Chuck's legacy? Because I've seen interviews with Chuck. I've seen the documentary movie about Chuck. Chuck. It seems like he's the antithesis of his stage persona. Seems like a very soft-spoken, really sweet, kind-hearted kind of guy. Is that what you remember the most about him?
Chuck was a. These are simplified representations. They're oversimplifications of a complicated person.
Yes.
And Chuck was a complicated individual with like most of us, multiple facets to his personality. He was a fully rounded person. So to just say that he was just this sweet guy who soft-spoken and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Hey, Chuck had a sting when he needed to, or when he wanted to, when he felt provoked to. He had a side to him that could be a little more rough-edged.
Right.
Absolutely. Right. And let me hasten to add, like all of us.
Yes, absolutely. Add that caveat on there for sure. Yes.
We're all complicated individuals with multiple facets to our personality. So was Chuck. So was Chuck the way you described him? Absolutely.
Yes.
Was he also not that sometimes? Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. But of course that's his passion, though.
I'm a super nice guy until you get on my nerves.
Right, until you're not nice. Right.
I'm sure it's absolutely the same with you, Mark. Someone gets on your nerves, sure, at the very least, you're going to excuse yourself. You're not going to sit there and just keep being nice.
Yeah.
At minimum. And and if it's someone you work with, you might have to deal with that situation. If it's someone who works under you or for you, you absolutely will have to deal with that situation. So
got to be the bad guy sometimes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And Chuck had all of those sides, because he couldn't manage a band and not. He would have been walked on. You know what I mean?
Right.
He would have been walked all over and taken advantage of. And Chuck definitely was never walked on or taken advantage of.
So now that it's 20 plus years since his untimely passing. Hi, James's better half.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Can we put this to bed? Is Chuck Schuldiner, though, the godfather, the creator of death metal as we know it? Does he deserve that accolade? Is that how you see him?
I do. Chuck Schuldiner. A lot of people want to argue the possessed versus death thing.
Yeah.
I see them as hand in glove.
Yeah.
Chuck was, there's no doubt that Chuck was a possessed fan.
Yes.
There's no doubt that him and Jeff hung out in the Bay Area when he was out there. But there's no doubt that, and there's no doubt that Chuck didn't write his music in a vacuum, but a lot more informed what Chuck did than just Possessed. Possessed was a small factor of it. And there's also no doubt that Death, when came out with Scream Bloody Gore, was probably the first really fully formed, totally death metal record.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more.
Now, was Possessed like the initial impetus of what became death metal? Perhaps even Chuck would tell you that.
Yes. Agreed.
I think that if Chuck were here, he would agree, at least, that it was part of the formula. It was part of all the parts he distillated into, and absorbed into him, that became the style that became the very first fully formed, fully realized death metal band. Perhaps it's more appropriate to refer to Possessed as sort of like, proto death metal. But I think Possessed deserves their accolades as godfathers of death metal just as much as Chuck and Death do.
Fair enough.
Because I'm not going to say that Death and would not have existed without Possessed, but it would have been different. That's without doubt.
Yeah. Now, in closing, I just want to ask the Living Monstrosity. I know that there's a tribute album in the works. If I've read that and done my research right, when will that? Well, first of all, is that in the works? And if it is, when will that see the light of day?
Well, I was working on one going back years ago.
Right.
Like over 15 years ago, I was working on one, and I still have all those tracks in the can. The bottom line is, I stopped working on it for a number of reasons. One of them, which was pretty pernicious, but which has that problem has gone away. It's resolved.
Okay.
And so now, obviously, the moving parts that were in place to get that behemoth of a project moving forward and rolling when it did, those of all have been at rest for a long time. So now it's a matter of getting the proper lubrication and fuel and impetus back into those moving parts so that it can roll again. And that's what I'm figuring out, if that's still wanted, desired, and needed by everyone involved. And if it is, then I will get it done. Now that the main hindrance and problem has resolved itself. I'm not going to go into what that is. It wouldn't be fair to everyone involved. But a major hindrance came to a resolution.
Awesome.
And so that sort of leaves it open for the beast to be revived. It's just not going to be as simple. It's not as simple as flicking a switch. There's a lot of people to consult, a lot of things to get done to make it happen. So perhaps it will get done, and I certainly hope so.
Well, and I'm sure.
But it was put to bed. It was put to bed quite some time ago.
Good. Then hopefully there's nothing.
No,
then hopefully there's nothing
there's
standing in
still
the
a
way.
lot left to do. There's still some recording to do, and there's all the
Sure.
mixing and mastering to do.
Sure.
And there's some re-recording that will need to be done, and there's also a lot of clearances and permissions and stuff like that will have to get done.
Right.
And because paperwork and clearances and permissions that were in place back in the day when we started are no longer valid. All this
kind of null and
so
void.
we got to redo a lot of that work, and we will.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hey, well, I wish you well with it, man. And I hope that it sees the light of day, because I know there's a lot of metal fans out there that are certainly happy that the legacy of Chuck, the legacy of Death, the legacy of this music, you know, is still, even years after his passing, you know, still has a life of its own. And it's seeing all these reissues is great. Seeing you getting out and doing the shows is great. And just appreciate all the great music, man, that we've gotten from you over the years, man. Nobody will ever convince me that Spiritual Healing is not the best Death album, nor will they convince me that Cause of Death is not the best Obituary album. I'm sorry, they won't.
Hey, man, I appreciate you. I cannot find the will to argue with you on those points. Try as I might.
And I appreciate you being so generous with your time, man, and you know, taking some time to talk to us today, man. And I'm sure you're eager to get home and have your better half whip up one of those delicious meals. I know I would be. So,
oh yes, oh yes.
You got something good on the agenda tonight? What are we whipping up? Some baked salmon? What are we doing? Every time it's always something good with you guys. Some seafood. You're always whipping up fantastic looking steaks and asparagus.
Well, I think it's gonna be a lovely Cobb salad.
Yeah.
Oh, are we cracking the whip? Yeah, we're cracking the whip a little bit on the dietary. You're keeping them healthy, right?
Oh yeah, she's going to town on the chicken. Trust me, it's delicious.
Yeah, the chicken.
Listen, man, as a guy that's been married for 24 years, though, man, like we as guys, man, we do need somebody to keep us in check. I realized that the longer that I've been married, though, man, is that I don't know that I would have got very far in life if I didn't, you know, if I didn't hitch myself to a wife. It's just facts.
You know.
I give my wife that kind of credit all the time. I mean, you know, she really keeps shit in order. Sometimes even shit that I don't even think about. Like when my kids were little, I didn't know fucking sizes,
you know,
shoe sizes, and keeping track of the kids' appointments.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah. My condolences to all the single guys out there. I know that there's a lot of those because I was one of them. You know, just you know.
Yeah.
You know, 5 short years ago, but
yeah.
You know, I can assure you that if it's meant to happen for you, it's going to happen no matter what you do. Yeah. And if you get a good, you know, you get a good person in your life, it's
yeah,
you know, it lifts you both up, you know.
Yeah, agreed. I'm certainly happy that you two have found each other, man, and that you have found that happiness, man. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to see it. Yeah, and I appreciate you spending some time with me, man. Let you get on with your life, man. Shouldn't be on the phone and driving, Mr. Murphy. Don't mind the hair.
Thank you.
Don't mind the hair. It's not real. It goes right back into the bag when the show's over. That's God's honest truth. It's shtick. That's all it is. You know, but you know, you got to be remembered, right? You're going to remember this interview. I hope.
Right on, my friend.
You just don't remember my association with Ray Curry, though. That's not my finest moment. But no. He's a great bro, man. And the work you've done on his Outlier albums and and yes, you were on Half Dead. I'm telling you, I will tell Ray Curry to gently remind you that you were on it.
He needs to send me the track.
Yeah, he will. But listen, James, I appreciate it, man.
I don't have it anymore, that's for sure.
Yeah, but let's stay in touch, man. We'll definitely do this again, man, for sure.
Right on, Mark.
Yeah. Thanks, all right. Have a good rest of your day, man. You guys have fun.
Bye.
All right, you too. Take
Bye-bye.
it easy.
Nice meeting you guys.
Bye.
All right. Have a good one, Ben. Bye-bye.
All right, you too.
Well, there you have it, and I am going to fucking say it, man. That's a legend right there. That's what a legend looks like. That's what a legend sounds like. That is the legendary James Murphy. Do I really need to run off the accolades? Guy was in Death. Guy was in Obituary. Guy was in Testament. I mean, right there. That's a fucking, you know, that's a career that most guys in music would salivate over, especially, you know, in the extreme metal genre, you know, in the pantheon of great bands. Those are bands right there. Those are bands. Guy was on Spiritual Healing, which you heard me say, greatest Death album. Cause of Death, Obituary, greatest Obituary. I mean, that guy, man, look up his credentials because, as they say, he a man. And very happy for him and where he is in his life. Seems to be doing very, very well for himself. Got himself a good girl that can do some good cooking, too. Friends of mine on Facebook, so I know. She puts out some good meals for him. So I hope you guys out there, my PodScum audience, enjoyed that. That is the legendary James Murphy. More of a behind-the-scenes guy now, but he does play. Who knows? He might be playing on the album that you're out there jamming right now. You heard him say it. He's a session guy, man. So he might be popping on tracks. He's out there when you don't even know he's out there. Let's put it that way. So go check out his work. You will be blown away, man. That guy is a guitar god. That's right, guitar god. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. See you guys the next time on PodScum. And remember to take it easy and keep it sleazy.